Richard Garrison sat alone in the corner booth of Molly's Diner, a small roadside restaurant on the outskirts of Portland. The place was nothing special, just a faded blue building with flickering neon signs and worn leather seats. But right now, it was exactly what he needed. Away from the glass towers and designer suits of his usual world, the coffee in front of him had gone cold. Richard hadn't touched it. His eyes were fixed on the numbers glowing from his phone screen. The stock for his company, Garrison Innovations, had dropped 15% in just 3 days. 15 years of building an empire, and now vultures were circling, waiting for him to show weakness. Richard rubbed his tired eyes. He hadn't slept properly in 3 days. His expensive suit was wrinkled, and dark circles had formed under his eyes. For a man worth $8 billion, he looked surprisingly human tonight. "More coffee, sir?" Richard looked up to see a young waitress with a coffee pot in her hand. Her name tag read, Lily. She couldn't be older than 19 or 20. Her uniform was clean but clearly old and faded at the edges. Despite this, she had a warm smile that seemed genuine, not the practiced kind he was used to seeing in business meetings. "Yes, please," Richard said, pushing his cup forward. "And maybe something to eat." "What's good here?" "The apple pie is fresh today. My grandmother's recipe," Lily said. "I'd recommend it with vanilla ice cream." Richard nodded. "I'll take that." As Lily walked away, Richard's phone rang again. The caller ID showed Alan Porter, his chief financial officer and oldest friend in the business. Richard sighed and answered. "Tell me you have good news, Alan." "The Baker Group is making another move," Alan said, his voice tense. "They've approached 3 more board members. We need to counter with cash, Richard, the kind of offer they can't refuse." Richard's jaw tightened. The Baker Group had been trying to take over his company for months. "How much?" $100,000 each. In cash. Tonight. Richard glanced at the black leather suitcase beside him. Inside was exactly $100,000 in cash. He had been planning to use it to buy a rare painting from a private collector who only dealt in cash. Art was Richard's one escape from the business world, but now that would have to wait. "I have some cash with me. I'll get the rest from my home safe and meet you at the office in 2 hours. "This needs to happen now, Richard," Alan insisted. "Baker's people are meeting them for breakfast. We need to get to them first." Richard ended the call just as Lily returned with his pie. The warm smell of cinnamon and apples filled the air around him. "Here you go," she said, placing the plate in front of him. "Rough day?" Richard looked at her, surprised by the simple question. Most people in his world were too afraid or too calculating to ask about his feelings. "Rough week," he admitted. "Business problems," Lily nodded. "My grandmother always says problems look smaller after pie." She gave him a small smile before moving to another table. Richard took a bite of the pie. It was good, not fancy like the desserts at the 5-star restaurants he usually ate at, but somehow more satisfying. For a moment he forgot about the Baker Group and dropping stock prices. His phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from his pilot. "Jet ready when you are, sir." Richard quickly finished his pie, left $40 under his coffee cup, and grabbed his coat. His mind was already racing through strategies and counter-moves for the coming battle. He hurried out to the black SUV waiting in the parking lot, completely forgetting the leather suitcase still sitting beside the booth. Inside the diner, Lily was clearing tables as the late evening crowd thinned out. Most nights she worked until closing at 11, then took the late bus home to the small apartment she shared with her grandmother. Tonight was her turn to mop the floors, which meant she'd miss the 11 o'clock bus and have to wait for the midnight one. Lily was tired. She had been up since 5 that morning studying for her community college biology exam before her first shift at the coffee shop near campus. After classes, she came directly to the diner for her second job. But she never complained. Every dollar she earned brought her one step closer to her dream of becoming a nurse. As she approached the corner booth to clean it, Lily noticed the generous tip the businessman had left. $40 for a $7 pie was unexpected. She smiled to herself as she pocketed the money, already calculating how much of it would go to her grandmother's medication and how much to her textbook fund. When she lifted the empty plate, she spotted the black suitcase tucked against the wall of the booth. "Hey, Frank," she called to the cook who was preparing to leave. "Did you see where that man in the suit went? He forgot something." Frank shrugged as he untied his apron. "Saw him get into some fancy black car. Took off in a hurry." Lily pulled the suitcase out from the booth. It was heavy and made of expensive leather, with a small combination lock on the front that hadn't been secured. Something about holding it made her nervous. People didn't usually forget items this valuable. "Should we open it?" asked Maggie, the other waitress who was counting her tips at the counter. "Might have his contact info inside." Lily hesitated. "I don't know. It feels wrong to look through someone's things." "Oh, come on," Maggie said, walking over. "We're not stealing anything, we're trying to return it." Lily knew Maggie was right. They needed to find out who the suitcase belonged to. Carefully, she unzipped the bag and opened it just enough to look inside. What she saw made her gasp. The suitcase was filled with neatly stacked bundles of cash. More money than Lily had ever seen in her life. "Oh my God," Maggie whispered, her eyes wide. "Close it, quick." Lily's hands trembled as she zipped the suitcase shut. Her heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. "There must be thousands in there," Maggie said, her voice hushed, even though Frank had already left and no customers remained in the diner. "What do we do?" Lily asked, her mind racing. "Check if there's ID or something," Maggie suggested, looking nervously toward the windows as if expecting someone to burst in looking for the money. Lily carefully opened a small pocket on the inside of the suitcase. There she found a business card. "Richard Garrison, CEO, Garrison Innovations," she read aloud. There was a phone number and email address printed in sleek silver letters on the black card. "Wait, Garrison? As in the tech guy? The billionaire?" Maggie grabbed the card from Lily's hand. "Holy cow, Lily, this guy's loaded, like super rich. This money probably means nothing to him." Lily took the card back, frowning. "It doesn't matter how rich he is. It's still his." The two young women stared at the suitcase. "You could pay for your grandmother's surgery with that," Maggie said quietly. "All her medications. You could quit this job and focus on school." Lily bit her lip. Her grandmother had been on the waiting list for heart surgery for months. The insurance would cover part of it, but they needed $15,000 they didn't have. Every night, Lily listened to her grandmother's labored breathing and felt helpless. "I'm just saying, who carries this much cash anyway? It's probably not even legal," Maggie continued. "And if he's rich enough to forget it, he's rich enough not to miss it." Lily looked down at the card in her hand, then at the suitcase. The worn strap of her second-hand purse dug into her shoulder, a constant reminder of how hard she worked for every dollar. With this money, all their problems would disappear overnight. She picked up the suitcase and carried it to the back office. "I'm going to lock this in the safe overnight," she told Maggie. "I need to think." At home, in the tiny one-bedroom apartment she shared with her grandmother, Lily lay awake listening to the sound of traffic outside their window. The image of the cash-filled suitcase kept flashing in her mind. All that money, all their problems solved. But then she remembered the tired look in Richard Garrison's eyes. He might be a billionaire, but he was still a person. And that night, he had looked like a person with his own set of problems. Her grandmother coughed in her sleep from the other side of the thin curtain that divided their living space. The sound made Lily's chest tighten with worry and love. What would her grandmother tell her to do? The answer came immediately. "Do what lets you sleep at night, child." Lily turned onto her side and closed her eyes, her decision made. Tomorrow would bring what it would bring. But tonight, at least, she would sleep with a clear conscience. Morning light filtered through the thin curtains of Lily's apartment. She had barely slept. The image of the black suitcase filled with money kept appearing in her mind. She got up quietly, trying not to wake her grandmother, who was finally sleeping peacefully. In the tiny bathroom, Lily splashed cold water on her face and stared at her reflection. Dark circles had formed under her eyes. Her blonde hair was tied in a messy ponytail. She looked tired, but her mind was clear. She knew what she had to do. At the diner, Lily arrived earlier than usual. She nodded to the morning cook and went straight to the office where the safe was kept. The manager, Joe, was already there counting the previous day's earnings. "Morning, Lily. You're in early," Joe said, looking up from his paperwork. "There's something I need to tell you," Lily said. She explained about the forgotten suitcase and its contents. Joe's eyes widened as she spoke. $100,000? Are you sure? He asked. Lily nodded. At least that much. Maybe more. Joe whistled low. And you're planning to return it? It's not mine, Lily said simply. Joe opened the safe and pulled out the black suitcase. It looked even more expensive in the daylight. You know, he said slowly, no one would blame you if some of this money went missing before it got back. To its owner, a man who can forget this much cash clearly doesn't need it. Lily shook her head. I'd know. That's enough. Joe studied her face for a moment, then nodded with respect. You're a rare one, Lily Summers. So what's your plan? Lily pulled out the business card she had found. I'm going to call him. Her hands trembled slightly as she dialed the number on the card. It rang 4 times before a professional female voice answered. Mr. Garrison's office. Lily took a deep breath. Hello. My name is Lily Summers. I'm calling about a suitcase Mr. Garrison left at Molly's Diner in Portland last night. There was a pause on the other end. One moment, please. After a minute of silence, a man's voice came on the line. It wasn't Richard Garrison. This is Alan Porter, Mr. Garrison's chief financial officer. You found a suitcase? Yes, sir. Mr. Garrison left it at the diner where I work. It has, Lily lowered her voice, a large amount of cash inside. Another pause. And you're calling to return it? The surprise in his voice was clear. Yes, sir. Ms. Summers, was it? Where are you now? At the diner. Molly's Diner on Highway 26. Stay there. Don't move. I'm sending someone immediately. 2 hours later, a black SUV pulled up outside the diner. A tall man in a dark suit stepped out and entered. His eyes scanned the room until they landed on Lily, who was serving coffee to an elderly couple. Ms. Summers? He called. Lily nodded and approached him cautiously. Are you from Mr. Garrison? The man showed her an ID card. Jack Morris, head of security for Mr. Garrison. I understand you have something that belongs to him. Lily led Jack to the office where Joe had been watching over the suitcase. Jack inspected it carefully, opening it to count the money. His face revealed nothing, but when he finished, he looked at Lily with new interest. It's all here, he said. Every dollar. Lily shrugged. It wasn't mine to take. Jack pulled out his phone and stepped outside to make a call. When he returned, his manner had changed slightly. Mr. Garrison would like to thank you in person. He's asked me to bring you to New York. Lily blinked in surprise. New York? I can't go to New York. I have work and my grandmother. All expenses paid, Jack interrupted. Mr. Garrison is very insistent. He rarely meets people like you. People like me? Honest people. Lily looked down at her worn waitress uniform. I don't have clothes for New York. That won't be a problem, Jack assured her. After explaining the situation to Joe, who gave her time off with surprising willingness, Lily called her grandmother. She tried to sound casual as she explained that she needed to go to New York for a day or two. Her grandmother was confused but supportive as always. Be careful, child, she said. Big cities have big troubles. 3 hours later, Lily found herself sitting in a private jet. The seats were soft leather and a flight attendant had offered her champagne, which she politely declined. Jack sat across from her, working on a laptop. The whole situation felt unreal. Mr. Morris, Lily said, why does Mr. Garrison want to see me? He could have just sent a thank you note. Jack looked up from his computer. In Mr. Garrison's world, Ms. Summers, people are always looking for angles. They want things from him, they lie, they manipulate. You found a suitcase with enough money to change your life and you returned it without taking a single dollar. That makes you very unusual. Lily frowned. It wasn't a hard choice, it wasn't my money. Jack smiled slightly. And that answer is exactly why he wants to meet you. The flight to New York took less than 5 hours. When they landed, another black car was waiting. Lily watched through the window as they drove through the busy streets of Manhattan. The buildings were taller than any she had ever seen, reaching up into the clouds. People hurried along the sidewalks, everyone seeming to have somewhere important to be. They stopped in front of a gleaming tower of glass and steel with the name Garrison in large letters near the top. Lily's stomach tightened with nerves as Jack led her through the fancy lobby. Security guards nodded respectfully as they passed. They took an elevator that moved so fast Lily's ears popped. "Mr. Garrison's office is on the top floor," Jack explained. "He's in a meeting right now, but should be done soon." They stepped out into a large waiting area with glass walls offering a view of the entire city. Lily had never been this high up before. The people on the streets below looked like ants. Woman at a desk smiled at them. "Ms. Summers? Mr. Garrison will see you in conference room 3. Would you like something to drink while you wait?" "Water, please," Lily said, her mouth suddenly dry. Jack led her to a room with a long table and more glass walls. "I'll leave. You here. Mr. Garrison will join you shortly." Alone in the huge room, Lily felt very small and out of place. Her simple jeans and t-shirt, which she had changed into before leaving Portland, seemed shabby compared to the elegant surroundings. She sipped her water and tried to calm her racing heart. The door opened and Richard Garrison walked in. He looked different from the tired man at the diner. Today he wore a perfectly fitted gray suit and moved with confidence. But his eyes were the same, sharp and observant. "Ms. Summers," he said, extending his hand. "I believe I have you too. Thank for saving me from a very difficult situation." Lily stood and shook his hand. "I just did what anyone would do, Mr. Garrison." Richard smiled. If only that were true. He gestured for her to sit and took a seat across from her. "Do you know what was in that suitcase?" "Money," Lily said. "A lot of it." $100,000, Richard confirmed. "Money that was needed urgently to save my company from a hostile takeover. If you hadn't found it and returned it..." He shook his head. "Let's just say you did me a bigger favor than you realize." Lily didn't know what to say to that. She looked down at her, hands folded in her lap. "I'd like to offer you a reward," Richard continued. "Name your price." Lily looked up, startled. "I don't want a reward, Mr. Garrison. I just did what was right." For a long moment, Richard studied her face as if searching for something. Whatever he saw seemed to satisfy him. "Everyone wants something, Miss Summers," he said finally. "What do you want from life?" Lily looked at Richard Garrison across the large conference table. His question hung in the air between them. What did she want from life? No one had ever asked her that before, at least not someone who might actually be able to help make it happen. "I want to be a nurse," Lily said finally. "I'm taking classes at community college, but it's slow going because I have to work 2 jobs. Richard nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Why nursing?" Lily's eyes brightened. This was something she could talk about with confidence. "I want to help people. When my parents died, there was this nurse in the hospital who was so kind to me. She made the worst day of my life a little bit easier. I want to be that person, for someone else." Richard leaned back in his chair. "And what's stopping you?" "Money," Lily said simply. "My grandmother is sick. She needs heart surgery that our insurance won't fully cover. Between her medical bills and rent, there's not much left for school." Richard stood up and walked to the window. From his office, he could see most of Manhattan spread out below him. He owned buildings, companies, even a small island off the coast of Greece. But something about this young woman's honest eyes made him feel like she possessed something he had lost long ago. "Ms. Summers." "Lily, please." "Lily," Richard corrected himself. "I'd like to tell you a story. When I was about your age, I had nothing. My father was a factory worker who died when I was 16. I worked my way through college doing odd jobs. My first business was run out of my mother's garage. I know what it's like to count every dollar." He turned back to face her. "But somewhere along the way, I forgot those lessons. In my world, people lie, cheat, and steal to get ahead. Trust is a luxury I can't afford. Yet you found a suitcase full of cash and didn't take a penny. That reminds me of something important. Lily shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Mr. Garrison, I really don't need a reward. Anyone would have done the same. Richard smiled sadly. No, Lily, they wouldn't have, and that's precisely my point. He walked back to the table and pressed a button on a small device. Carol, could you come in, please? A moment later, a professional-looking woman entered the room with a tablet in her hand. Carol, this is Lily Summers. I want to set up a full scholarship for her nursing program, whichever school she wants. Also, arrange for her grandmother's medical needs to be taken care of. The best doctors, private room, whatever she needs. Carol nodded, making notes on her tablet. Of course, Mr. Garrison. Anything else? Richard looked at Lily, who sat frozen, in shock. I think that's a start. Thank you, Carol. After Carol left, Lily found her voice again. Mr. Garrison, I can't accept this. It's too much. Consider it payment for saving my company, Richard said. That suitcase was meant to secure votes from board members to prevent a takeover. Without it, I might have lost everything I've built over the last 20 years. Lily still looked uncertain. But, no buts, Richard said firmly. You did the right thing when no one was watching. That deserves to be rewarded. He paused. There is one condition, though. What's that? Lily asked cautiously. I'd like you to work here part-time while you attend school. We have a cafeteria that could use someone with your work ethic. The hours would be flexible around your classes. Lily blinked in surprise. You want me to be a waitress in your company cafeteria? Richard smiled. For now. Think of it as a foot in the door. Who knows where you might end up? He extended his hand. Do we have a deal? Lily hesitated only a moment before shaking his hand. Deal. Later that evening, Lily sat in a hotel room fancier than any place she had ever stayed. Richard had insisted she spend the night in New York before flying back to Portland tomorrow. She had just finished a long phone call with her grandmother, trying to explain the miraculous turn of events. It doesn't make sense, child, her grandmother had said. Rich, people don't just give away money like that. Lily wasn't sure she understood it either. The whole day felt like a dream. She walked to the window and looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Richard Garrison was probably in his own home, a place she couldn't even imagine. Meanwhile, in a spacious penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park, Richard sat alone with a glass of scotch. His phone rang and he answered when he saw it was Alan. The Baker Group is backing off, Alan said without preamble. The board members sided with us. We're safe, for now at least. Good, Richard said. Thanks for handling it. You sound distracted, Alan noted. Is this about that waitress? Jack mentioned you offered her a job. Richard took a sip of his drink. She returned $100,000 without taking a single bill, Alan. When was the last time you met someone like that? Never, Alan admitted. It's unheard of. Exactly. And it got me thinking about my life, about the kind of person I used to be before all this. Richard gestured at his expensive apartment, though Alan couldn't see it. Careful, Richard, Alan warned. Nostalgia is a dangerous thing. We fought hard to get where we are. Maybe too hard, Richard murmured. My daughter won't even speak to me anymore. She says I care more about business than people. That's not fair, Alan protested. You provide jobs for thousands. When did that become enough? Richard asked quietly. When did making money become more important than being the kind of man my father would have been proud of? Alan didn't have an answer for that. After they hung up, Richard walked to his home office and opened a drawer he rarely looked in. Inside was a framed photo of a young woman with his eyes, his daughter Kate. They hadn't spoken in 3 years. Richard picked up his phone and started to dial her number, then stopped. What would he even say? That meeting a waitress had made him question his life choices? It sounded ridiculous, even, to him. He put the phone down and instead opened his laptop. He began researching heart surgeons, making a list of the best ones in the country. Tomorrow he would make sure Lily's grandmother got the best care possible. The next morning, Lily met Richard in the lobby of Garrison Tower. She had put on her best clothes, which still looked plain compared to the stylish business people hurrying through the building. "All set?" Richard asked. "The jet is ready when you are." Lily nodded. "Mr. Garrison, I still don't know how to thank you for all this." "You already did," Richard said. "You reminded me of something I had forgotten." "What's that?" Lily asked. "That integrity matters. That doing the right thing should be its own reward." He smiled. "Though in this case, I'm happy to provide additional incentives." As they walked toward the exit, a young woman entered the building. She was stylishly dressed with dark hair and familiar eyes. She stopped abruptly when she saw Richard. "Dad?" she said, sounding surprised. Richard froze. "Kate? What are you doing here?" Kate hesitated. "I had a meeting with Alan about the foundation. I didn't know you'd be here." An uncomfortable silence fell between them. Lily looked from father to daughter, sensing the tension. "I should go," Lily said quietly. "No, stay," Richard said. He turned to Kate. "Kate, this is Lily Summers. She's starting a scholarship program through the company." "Lily, this is my daughter, Kate." Kate gave Lily a polite nod, then looked back at her father with curious eyes. "Scholarship program? That's new." "Yes, well," Richard said. "Sometimes we need to be reminded of what's important." Kate looked at her father with questioning eyes. The last time they had spoken, it had ended in an argument about his priorities: money over family, business over relationships. Now he was standing here talking about scholarships and looking at this young woman with something close to respect. "Maybe we could all have coffee," Richard suggested, breaking the awkward silence. "I'm sure Lily's flight can wait a bit longer." Kate hesitated, then nodded. "Sure, why not?" The three of them went to a small cafe in the lobby of Garrison Tower. Despite the fancy surroundings, it felt strangely intimate sitting around the small table. Richard ordered for all of them, remembering that Kate liked her coffee with extra cream. "So," Kate said, turning to Lily, "how did you and my father meet?" Lily glanced at Richard, unsure how much to say. He nodded slightly, giving her permission to tell the story. "I work as a waitress at a diner in Portland," Lily explained. "Your father came in a few days ago and accidentally left a suitcase there. I found it and returned it to him." Kate raised an eyebrow. "And for that he's giving you a scholarship?" "It was a suitcase with $100,000 in cash," Richard added quietly. Kate's eyes widened. "And you returned it? All of it?" Lily nodded, her cheeks turning slightly pink. "It wasn't mine." Kate looked from Lily to her father, then back again. A small smile appeared on her face. "Well, that explains it then." "Explains what?" Richard asked. "Why you look different today," Kate said. "Less." She searched for the right word. "Less hard." Richard cleared his throat, looking uncomfortable with this observation. "Lily is going to nursing school. She's been working 2 jobs to support herself and her grandmother." Kate's expression softened as she looked at Lily. "That's impressive. What area of nursing interests you?" As Lily talked about her dreams of becoming a pediatric nurse, Richard watched his daughter. It had been 3 years since they had a conversation this normal. No arguing, no bringing up past mistakes. He had missed her more than he realized. After coffee, Kate surprised both of them by offering to show Lily around New York before her flight. "Dad probably has meetings anyway," she said, not quite meeting his eyes. Richard felt a pang of regret because she was right. He always had meetings. It was the excuse he had given for missing her college graduation, her first art exhibition, countless birthdays and holidays. "Actually," he found himself saying, "I'm free today, if you don't mind my joining you." Both women looked at him in surprise. Then Kate smiled, a genuine smile that reminded him of when she was little. "I'd like that," she said. They spent the day showing Lily the highlights of New York. They walked through Central Park, visited Times Square, and took the ferry to see the Statue of Liberty. Richard couldn't remember the last time he had been a tourist in his own city. Watching Lily's excitement at seeing these landmarks for the first time made them seem new to him as well. At one point, when Lily was taking photos of the skyline, Kate turned to her father. "I like her," she said quietly. "She's genuine." "Yes," Richard agreed. "That's a rare quality these days." Kate gave him a sidelong glance. "Is that why you're helping her? Because she's a novelty?" Richard shook his head. "No. It's because she reminded me of something important. Something I think I forgot along the way." "What's that?" Kate asked. "That the measure of a person isn't what they take," Richard said slowly, "but what they give back." Kate was quiet for a moment. "Mom used to say that," she finally said. Richard nodded, feeling a lump in his throat. Yes, she did. By late afternoon, it was time for Lily to head to the airport. Richard's driver took them to where the private jet was waiting. As they pulled up to the hangar, Lily turned to Kate. "It was really nice meeting you," she said. "Thanks for showing me around." Kate smiled and handed Lily a business card. "Keep in touch, okay? Let me know how nursing school goes." Richard walked Lily to the plane. Before she boarded, he handed her an envelope. "The details of your scholarship and your grandmother's medical arrangements are all in here," he said. "My assistant will contact you about the job at Garrison. Tower when you're ready." Lily looked at the envelope, then at Richard. "I still don't know how to thank you properly for all this. Just make the most of it," Richard said. "And maybe someday do the same for someone else." Lily nodded, then impulsively gave him a quick hug. "I will. I promise." As Richard watched the plane take off, he felt Kate come to stand beside him. "That was a good thing you did," she said. "It wasn't entirely selfless," Richard admitted. "Meeting her made me think about my own life, about the things I've lost sight of." Kate was quiet for a moment. "Like family?" Richard turned to look at his daughter. "Yes, like family." They drove back to the city in comfortable silence. When they reached Kate's apartment building, Richard asked the driver to wait. "Would you like to have dinner tomorrow night?" he asked Kate before she got out. "Just the two of us?" Kate studied his face as if looking for signs that this was the same old pattern, but something had changed in her father's eyes. "I'd like that," she said finally, "but no business talk." Richard smiled. "Deal." Back in his penthouse, Richard opened his laptop and began to type. He had been thinking about this all day. A new initiative for Garrison Innovations, a scholarship fund for hardworking students who couldn't afford college. He would call it the Second Chance Foundation. As he worked late into the night, Richard felt more energized than he had in years. For the first time in a long time, he was building something that wasn't just about making money. Meanwhile, on the flight back to Portland, Lily read through the papers in the envelope. There was information about her full scholarship to the nursing program at Portland State University, starting next semester. Another document detailed her grandmother's upcoming heart surgery, with one of the top cardiac surgeons in the country. All expenses paid. There was also information about a furnished apartment near the university that would be available for her and her grandmother once her grandmother recovered from surgery. It was all too much to take in. Just a few days ago, she had been a waitress struggling to make ends meet, with no clear path to achieving her dreams. Now everything had changed, all because she had done the right thing with that suitcase. The flight attendant offered her champagne, again, and this time Lily accepted. She raised the glass in a silent toast to Richard Garrison, the billionaire who had left a suitcase and found something more valuable in return. When the plane landed in Portland, Lily was surprised to see a car waiting for her on the tarmac. The driver held a sign with her name on it. "Ms. Summers?" he said as she approached. "I'm here to take you home." "Thank you," Lily said, still getting used to this new treatment. "But first, could we stop at the hospital? I want to see my grandmother." "Of course," the driver said. "Mr. Garrison mentioned you might want to do that." He's already arranged for your grandmother to be transferred to Portland Medical Center. The doctors are expecting you. Lily sat back in the comfortable car, watching her familiar city pass by through the window. Everything looked the same, but her whole world had changed. She thought about Richard and Kate and how returning a suitcase had somehow helped heal the rift between a father and daughter. She couldn't wait to tell her grandmother everything that had happened. For the first time in years, their future looked bright. 6 months had passed since the day Lily found Richard Garrison's suitcase at Molly's diner. The seasons had changed from spring to summer, and now to fall. The leaves in Portland were turning golden and red, and a crisp coolness filled the air. Lily stood in front of Portland State University's Health Sciences building, clutching her nursing textbooks to her chest. She still couldn't believe this was her life now. Her grandmother had successfully undergone heart surgery and was recovering well in their new apartment near campus. The place was spacious and bright, with wide windows that let in plenty of sunlight and a small balcony where her grandmother grew herbs. Lily was now a full-time nursing student with excellent grades. She worked part-time at the Portland branch of Garrison Innovations, not as a waitress but as an assistant in the company's new health initiative department. Richard had created the position specially for her, saying her perspective would be valuable. "Lily," a voice called out. Lily turned to see Maggie, her former co-worker from the diner, walking toward her. They still met regularly for coffee. "Hey, Maggie," Lily said with a smile. "How's the new job?" After Richard learned about Molly's diner, he had decided to invest in it. The small roadside restaurant was now renovated and expanded, with better pay for all the staff. Maggie had been promoted to manager. "It's amazing," Maggie said. "We're always busy now. People come in just to sit at the table where it happened." She laughed. "The Richard Garrison table, that's what everyone calls it." Lily shook her head, still finding it strange that her simple act of returning a suitcase had become something of a local legend. "And how's Danny?" "He finally went back to school," Maggie said. "That scholarship program your billionaire friend started? He got one." The Second Chance Foundation had become Richard's passion project. What had started as a small scholarship fund had grown into a major initiative, providing educational opportunities for hardworking young people from disadvantaged backgrounds across the country. The foundation had helped hundreds of students, already with thousands more expected in the coming years. "He's not my billionaire friend," Lily protested, though she smiled as she said it. In truth, she and Richard had developed a genuine friendship. He called her once a week to check on her progress and her grandmother's health. Sometimes Kate joined their calls too. Later that afternoon, Lily's phone rang while she was studying in the library. It was Richard. "Lily," he said when she answered. "How are your classes going?" "Really well," Lily replied. "I got an A on my anatomy exam." "Excellent," Richard said, sounding genuinely pleased. "Listen, I'm going to be in Portland next week. The foundation is looking at expanding some programs there. Would you be willing to help?" "Of course," Lily said. "What do you need?" "We're thinking of converting the building next to Molly's diner into a community center," Richard explained. "Job training, after-school programs, that sort of thing. I'd like your input on what the community needs most." Lily felt a rush of excitement. She had grown up in that neighborhood and knew exactly what would help the people there. "I have lots of ideas," she said. "I thought you might," Richard said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "There's something else too. Kate is coming with me. She's taken over as director of the foundation." "That's wonderful," Lily said. She knew how much it meant to Richard to have his daughter involved in his work. After they hung up, Lily sat thinking about how much had changed in 6 months. Richard Garrison was a different man now. The hard-driving businessman was still there, but he had found a balance. His company was doing better than ever. But now he made time for the things that truly mattered. The following week, Lily stood beside Richard and Kate as they surveyed the empty building that would become the community center. Sunlight streamed through the dusty windows, illuminating the potential of the space. "What do you think?" Richard asked, looking at Lily. "It's perfect," she said. "This neighborhood has always needed something like this. A place where people can learn new skills, where kids can go after school instead of being on the streets. Kate nodded in agreement. We'll need local input on the specific programs, people who know the community. Lily can help with that, Richard said confidently. She knows everyone around here. Later they had dinner at Molly's diner. The place looked different now, brighter, more modern, but it still had the same warm, welcoming feeling. Joe, the former manager who was now the owner, greeted them enthusiastically. The famous, "Table is free," he said with a wink, leading them to the corner booth where Richard had left his suitcase that fateful day. As they sat down, Richard looked around the diner. "Sometimes I think about how different things would be if I hadn't forgotten that suitcase," he said, "or if someone else had found it." "Everything happens for a reason," Kate said. "At least that's what Mom always believed." Richard smiled at his daughter. Their relationship had healed over the past months. They still had their disagreements, but now they talked through them instead of pulling away from each other. "I have something to show you both," Richard said, pulling out his phone. He showed them photos of a new project, a medical clinic being built in a low-income area of New York. "It's going to provide free or low-cost care to people who can't afford it. We're calling it the Summers Clinic." Lily looked up in surprise. "After me?" Richard nodded. "It seemed fitting. None of this would have happened without you." Lily felt tears in her eyes. "I just returned a suitcase. You did all the rest." "Sometimes people just need a reminder of what's important," Kate said, touching her father's hand. After dinner, they walked through the neighborhood as Lily pointed out places that held meaning. For her, the community college where she had started her education, the park where she had played as a child, the small clinic where a kind nurse had comforted her after her parents' accident. As they walked, people greeted Lily warmly. Many knew her story now and treated her with a mixture of respect and affection. She had become something of a local hero, though she still felt uncomfortable with the attention. "You know," Richard said as they walked, "the Baker Group made another attempt to take over my company last month." "What happened?" Lily asked. "We fought them off," Richard said. "But this time we did it differently. No bribes, no secret deals. We won because our employees and shareholders believe in what we're doing now. The foundation, the community initiatives, the ethical business practices. It's not just good for people, it's good for business too." Kate smiled proudly. "Dad's become something of a corporate reformer. Other CEOs think he's crazy. Or visionary," Richard corrected with a grin. "Depends who you ask." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the street, Lily looked at the man who had changed her life and whose life she had changed in return. Richard Garrison, the billionaire who had once valued money above all else, now understood the true meaning of wealth. "I have something to tell you both," Lily said. "I've been offered an internship at Portland Memorial Hospital. It's competitive, only 5 students were chosen." "That's fantastic," Kate exclaimed, giving her a hug. Richard beamed with pride. "I always knew you'd do great things, Lily." "I couldn't have done it without your help," Lily said. "You earned it yourself," Richard insisted. "All I did was remove the obstacles." As they walked back toward Molly's diner where their cars were parked, Lily thought about the strange twist of fate that had brought them all together. A forgotten suitcase, a simple act of honesty, and the ripple effects that had changed so many lives. The diner's neon sign glowed in the twilight, casting a warm light over the 3 of them. In the window was a small plaque that Joe had put up. "Home of the $100,000 lesson, Integrity Matters." Richard saw Lily looking at it and smiled. "Best money I ever lost," he said. And in that moment, standing between her 2 friends whose lives had been changed as profoundly as her own, Lily knew that some things were worth more than all the money in the world.